Welcome everybody to Theory Underground. I'm so excited for you to see this video. It is a conversation between myself and Elton LK of the Working Class Intelligentsia. It was recorded on December 6th at this 11-hour live stream marathon event. Now, most people don't have 11 hours to watch or listen to something even double speeded. And the fact is it looks a little intimidating when you've got that time energy lack. And so I've taken the individual interviews and conversations from that and am reposting them. This one is where Elton and I reflect upon how we've developed as thinkers and researchers, especially vis-a-vis this concept, the PMC. It's also about why everybody's wrong about the PMC, about why all the influencers you've grown to love in the political philosophy and theory influencer sphere ultimately need to spend more time with the source materials. And yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that we have the last word on the thing. We are growing ourselves. This is not just a simple debate between socialism and the post-left or something like that, because it goes beyond any of these categories into this more important thing called truth and understanding and trying to actually figure out the world situation that we are in. So you want to find out where we stand or where other people are wrong on this issue? Continue on. Welcome. Enjoy. Take care. Peace. All right, everybody. Welcome to Theory Underground, or welcome back if you were already here. I'm your host, David McKerracher. Today is the 1-year anniversary of Theory Underground. Welcome to the all-day live stream, or if you're watching this individual standalone video in the future, once it actually gets posted as such, or if you're listening from the podcast after the fact, welcome to you all as well. Trying to be beyond the present moment and remember who our audience is, which is mostly futural, which is to say, like, exists in the future. But right now we're looking back into the past and we're thinking about what we did this year. And one of the most exciting things I think that we did was together here, me and Elton. Elton, welcome. How's it going, man?
It's going good. I've enjoyed this past year working with you on this stuff and excited to talk about future things.
Cool, man. Yeah, exactly. And so I think what I'll just say is by way of introduction for all the sad souls who don't know you already. First, I mean, you are the lead organizer of the Dead Parrots Philosophical Society, a public philosophy group that meets monthly and has for like 7 or 10 years. Is that right?
We're getting to 13 years.
Damn.
Which is great.
Yeah. The time moves fast. And now that I'm back in Boise, I get to actually come to some things sometimes, which is really exciting. But outside of the work that you do there, you also, you work a regular job. You decided to not become a philosophy professor and instead do what you are doing on the side, which I think is awesome. I think it's like a genuine path forward for people who want to stay in the world of philosophy but don't want to get ensconced in the academic institution and have it become their job. And you've taken that more recently into the Democratic Socialists of America, which is a group that I'm not a part of, but I did help start in the local chapter here. And the reasons that I left are like multifaceted and everything, and it's all complicated, and ultimately a lot of that stuff boils down to the stuff I do at Theory Underground. But like, I would say that you're one of the people I keep in my life, right? Like DSA is almost sublated for me in my experience through you. And that you have actually moved up in the ranks. You're not just you're not just card carrying, you're not just involved, you're not just an organizer, but you've actually moved up to the National Education Committee for the DSA. Now, I was on the education committee of a faction of the DSA, the Red Republicans, for a few months, and it was the negation that I experienced in that time, the contradictions that I worked through in that time, ultimately were a big source of inspiration and birth of Theory Underground itself. But you've remained there with the cause, and you've taken it into the national committee. Now you teach the class podcast for the national committee. So you're just doing a lot. You're juggling a lot of things, and you also have your own podcast, Gromsky, the Working Class Intelligentsia podcast. And so I guess I just kind of want to set you up to say a little bit about how you got into all of this stuff, kind of like your own introduction, but also we'll then get into the course we taught together here, managerial class, ideology and consciousness, or consciousness and ideology.
You bet. So like I said, it was either 12 or 13 years ago. I'm not great at math, but started the philosophy group, Dead Parents Philosophy, and wanted it to be something basically where I could, meet and engage with people interested in philosophy. But I also always want my philosophy to be tied to the real world, whatever that means. So I was looking for, avenues for political engagement, and eventually joined DSA, Democratic Socialists of America. And it took me a while to decide to do so, just because, I don't have a lot of time for stuff like that, but at the same time, I find it important. And I got a lot out of it and didn't feel like I was getting, we were getting very much done. And it's just difficult to juggle. So eventually I decided, to start a political education group with Boise DSA, and did that for a while. So we had events, and they were great. And then the pandemic hit, and we had to go online to Zoom, and I struggled to find the drive to do that.
Right.
And I felt like people were less and less engaged as the pandemic went on. So then I volunteered for an opportunity to work on the National Political Education Committee, and that's a great group. It's something that I wish it had existed earlier, because starting political education for Boise DSA, I really struggled. What curriculum to cover, how do you facilitate meetings and that kind of stuff. So it was great to be able to work with National Political Education Committee. And then I was asked to start the podcast, and that has been just a great opportunity to really think through what kind of resources I think would be useful to people interested in socialism or local chapters. I won't keep going, but I just have enjoyed that, and we have covered all kinds of topics. I will say our most recent episode was with Michael Downs, with Mikey, talking about his essay in Underground Theory. And
which one?
I was why socialists need Žižek to understand working class.
Yeah.
I don't think I have the exact wording right there, but so it was the first time we talked about Žižek on the podcast, and that's a controversial topic, but I think it went great. So
honestly, I'm surprised you got away with it. It's like I think that you being just a little bit older than me, I'm not calling you old, but being a little bit older than me kind of allows you to have a little bit more of a mature and paternal relationship to the organization. I get there's all these reasons I couldn't do it. The PMC-ification and the sort of disavowal of radical responsibility that kind of comes with the PMC-ification of political economy in the last 100 years is such a big part of my issue with the DSA. But it's funny because Barbara Ehrenreich was well aware of it, and so you got me turned on to her, thankfully. You know what I mean? And so I find it fascinating that in my time of burnout with everything going on at the DSA, but also with Bernie, but also with just the broader like left movement and everything like that, that you stuck around, and that you didn't like, oh, look, see, you must just be bad or whatever. And that I really appreciate that. And I've always thought, that somehow like reflects on your character or whatever. I don't know. But I remember coming back from Hawaii, super disillusioned, and giving a talk that wasn't live. It wasn't public. You were there. There was like 12 other people. It was in that amphitheater, that small one off campus there. Yeah. And some people just had like little like, oh, well, and they just kind of free associate, bring whatever comes to mind. And I remember like your level of seriousness, and that it continued. There were follow-ups, and that we kept having conversations over pizza. That we get together when, for your lunch or whatever, when you're working. And I don't know, man, I just feel like there's a time when I could have just said, fuck the left and everybody who's associated with it. And I'm only going to be like Amy Therese, like where it's just like, I'm going to go the complete opposite direction. I'm just going to only hang out with right wingers now. Right. And then I'm just going to associate all leftism or leftists with being leftoids, and that there's like this sort of like extreme that like I who knows, I don't know, there before the grace of God go, I guess, kind of how I think about it. And so thank you for being there. I guess the thing that people probably don't understand about that course that we did is that like you're teaching it as a socialist, and I said I'll assume the position of the post-leftist. Even though it's like, I've got a problem with identity and like taking on some identity as this thing. It's like, I don't want to say I'm anti-left or post-left but I just fucking hate the master signifier and its big other. And I want to be able to treat humans as humans and still respect the fact that humans all have their master signifiers. Humans all have their big others. And so with that, it was the second course, right? So it was the second course at Theory Underground. Why did you decide that you wanted to teach it with me? Because I see that as some kind of like social risk, honestly. Like it was like a thing that you did. Like you could have caught a lot of flack for doing it. So why did you do it?
I did recognize some risk in doing it. And I think just because I believe in what you're doing here, which is that it is about, I apologize if you're picking up my printer.
I'm not.
Background.
Zoom.
Okay.
Zoom perfect. Is really good about cutting out background noise. You're excellent. Yeah.
Okay. In that what you're doing, of course, is providing educational resources to people who may or may not have access to it otherwise, and of course bringing focus to important texts. I mean, I don't need to go through it all, but I am excited about what you're doing and appreciate that. For me, understanding the concept of the PMC was pretty transformative in how I look at, the last 100 or more years in our country and Western society, and a bunch of other things. So I think it was just exciting that you were putting it front and center for an aspect of what your education was focused on.
Okay, now my favorite question of the day is, what would you say? So that speaks to like your intention. That speaks to our roles. Now let's say, what do you like? What was our positions? Like, what were on the PMC? Like, what was the positions that we held, and like, how did they agree and how did they contrast from your recollection?
Okay, let's see. So, maybe I'll start with myself. I grew up pretty like squarely in the middle of the working class, edging into what I would call petty bourgeois. But I through a process that I think I even talked about in the introduction of waypoint, eventually got absorbed into the PMC. And so then I was thinking about, Barbara Ehrenreich's description of the PMC as being, a group that is adversarial to the working class, but she was, I think this was before DSA came into existence, but she was a founding member of DSA, and the essays about the PMC, I think, was on some level trying to encourage the PMC left to support the working class and collaborate with the working class. And I think that there's of course more nuance to it in that there's the vast majority of the PMC that's never going to be a serious possibility, but there were the leftists from the new left that I think she was speaking to specifically with that essay. So that's I think where I was coming from. And then if I were to try to articulate where you were coming from, probably like a lot more skepticism towards the PMC and the what kind of redemption we can have of the PMC, and then specifically that we've seen the PMC like cause a lot of harm, and DSA, especially 2019 DSA, was pretty pathetic in some very visible moments, and in ways that were clearly PMC driven. And I'll just add that I have a lot of patience for stuff like that on some level, just because admittedly I'm probably coming from some of that background, but then second, just recognizing that we're having to recreate a socialist movement from practically nothing, so that's a whole conversation which we don't need to get into. And I need to let my dog out of the office here. 1 second.
Yeah, for sure. Elton's got these amazing dogs. So you can hear me. Oh, you're back. Perfect.
I'm back. I don't know if that's a very clear answer for you, but
yeah, no, that's fantastic.
About it.
A lot of skepticism for sure, as far as its redemptive quality. I also I feel like the PMC, the reason that Marxists are so against it is because it is a fundamental problem for them. And it's like the kind of negation or contradiction that any real dialectician would actually tarry with. But because most of them aren't real dialecticians, they just don't think that they have to. I mean, really, it sucks to have to just be so I don't mean to be cavalier. It's but also it's just at this point, I've had so many conversations and they all just go the same direction. There's a whole circuit. They always just go through the same scripts. And it's you didn't read the thing, right? You didn't read it. Ben Burgess at the Pomona College event talking about nurses and teachers. Well, it's kind of a problem for this theory that it would call nurses or teachers PMC, is it not? And I was the term is coined by Barbara Ehrenreich. She's the founder of the DSA. You're in the DSA. Read her essay. She addresses this. You're an academic. Do it like you would an academics think they don't have to engage seriously with source materials when it comes to the PMC. Everything else, it seems they'll engage with the source materials. And so it's just it's not made up by some Twitter accounts. It's not made up by some people. You saw with JM Adams from the News Center, they had said, that, oh yeah, no, I haven't read any, that or anything on it. But I know the discourse. And so it's like, okay, well, fair enough. So you don't like the way this functions in the discourse. Great. I hate that too. The discourse itself is the attention economy. I hate that. And the strong identities that form and the followings that they cultivate, it's just, yeah, we all don't like that. But that was our goal. Coming together was to say, well, there are source materials. And they're not just socialists, they're also conservative. They're also radical, like communists. We didn't actually read Mao, but we referenced the fact that Mao is aware of all of this. That's, he saw what was happening with Stalinism as PMCification, for lack of a better word, as well as, Trotsky, ultimately, he saw that too. So it's like everybody could see it. It's just Burnham who came along and was like, it's not just Lenin to Stalin it's also England. It's also the US. It's also fascist Germany. There's an actual contradiction in the development of capital that was not thought through thoroughly by Papa Daddy Marxman, And so, and I love Marx. I love what he did as far as like his praxis goes, but theoretically it's like, this is a real problem. And so for me, it's PMCification is like really what took place in the beginning of the 20th century, which we covered. I see that as the actual defeat of the working class, the actual defeat of the working. Right, like this, you want to talk about like, oh, there's no working class movement today. Oh, bad leadership or whatever. Oh my God, come on, guys. Let's be historical. Let's be dialectical. There's something outside of the system that is part of the system. You just didn't think of it because it wasn't there yet. Contingency was involved. To some degree, it was probably a little predictable, and I think people did kind of hint at it in their various ways, different theorists. But
the seed was there. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So how have you changed on this thesis in the last year?
Let's see. So I think I don't know if I can articulate kind of like how I've changed. The main things I've been focusing on is so, like I didn't really address it very much like in the class or in my essay, I don't think, but I am trying to articulate whether or not the PMC is a class. And I think it's more than just an academic point. So perhaps I'm wrong. I may find that this is not a useful thing to explore, but I've been trying to really understand, dialectical materialism and how the dialectics work, and also understand class in a somewhat kind of rigid scientific way. And when I say that, it's far from, I'm not a sociologist, far from science. But the point is that Marx obviously jumps in and out of talking about class in some kind of rigorous way. Sometimes he's talking about, the middle class, which doesn't really fit into any kind of rigorous understanding of class, for example. And then when you look at kind of like if the PMC is a class, and I won't, spend too much time on this, but I've been significantly influenced by Gramsci, and he thinks about essentially every class has its own intellectuals. So if you look in, feudalism, the aristocracy had their intellectuals. Those are basically the people in the church, for the most part. So like the Catholic monks, who were essentially the intellectuals of the day. The bourgeois intellectuals, we know who they are, but it's everybody from, politicians and political party leaders, but it's also Adam Smith, economists. And the PMC essentially would fit into that category of being bourgeois intellectuals, generally speaking. But then when we look at the PMC, they are significantly people from the working class. And so, I've been exploring kind of like what that means for the working class to have their own intellectuals, which of course is where my podcast title, Working Class Intelligentsia, comes from. But all of this that I've been talking about, I've been looking at, Marx, Lenin, and Althusser, and really trying to understand dictatorship of the proletariat, which, if you're not familiar, it's a pretty like if there's a division in DSA, it's going to be around the concept of the dictatorship of the proletariat. I'd say the vast majority of DSA members don't believe or don't support this concept that we need a dictatorship of the proletariat, which, I could have a lecture in of itself about kind of like why Marx used that term and what he meant for it, meant by it. But the important point is that it's, revolution that is really about recognizing that the working class needs to take power, and that, is, going to be through violence and, withholding some of the rule of law during that moment in time while the, working class stabilizes power. Okay, I don't want to get too far into that topic. My point is that I think this concept of the PMC is important to understand kind of like what the struggle for socialism will have to look like, because like you were saying, Marx didn't really predict the significance of the PMC in the 20th century. And where we are here in 2023, we have to be able to account for the PMC. And maybe, Marx's socialism is not actually even possible given the situation we're in. But whatever is possible, we have to understand kind of like the processes of dialectical materialism that have got us to this point, and where, how we go from this point. We need intellectuals in the working class that are solving the problems of the working class. What does it take in order for the working class to take power? So you asked like, how have I changed? And I think it's really just, those are the same problems that I was trying to understand, when we did the course. And I just feel like I've been kind of sharpening my opinions and understanding of all of that type of stuff. That being said, I'm still far from it. But yeah, I am really trying to understand kind of like what is the relationship between working class and PMC, what's possible. So
damn, it's good stuff, man. So with the last 10 minutes we've got here, I just want to say like the whole question about class, and I think Barbara, she went a lot further than people give her credit for in that first essay. But part of the issue is like, if we're just talking about class as source of income or amount of income is a big difference, and that sociologists tend to focus on amount, and the real question is the source, and that there's a big difference between a wage and a salary. Of course, there's also a difference between a wage and a salary when the salary includes the potential or like almost guarantee of symbolic institutional recognition and prestige, and the wage actually comes with derision. It looks down, like you're looked down on, you're stupid, you should follow. That's your job, is to be the good Democrat or be the good Republican. Be a good little Democrat, be a good little Republican, and you should do whatever. Okay. Yeah, we get this. Everyone gets that. And if you didn't realize that that's kind of what's entailed with this line of analysis or critique, everybody, then definitely check out the Professional Managerial Ideology course, which I'll give you free access to if you join the website and shoot me a message. It's technically, the videos and the exegeticals are already up on my YouTube channel, but if you go through all of those and you think it's awesome and you want to be a part of the forum, just hit us up. But okay, outside of that, there's also, outside of source of income, I see the most fundamental basis for this distinction is in the difference between control and ownership. The people who just want to make it the 99 versus the 1% say, oh, well, the ownership is all actually just the 1% and the 99% don't own shit. And so that's the difference between working class and the ruling class. And of course, there's like this 10% in America and in the world today that are not total owners, but they're large owners. And the universities, Catherine Liu's really good for this. The universities, their endowment funds are, investment portfolios at Wall Street. That is ownership in the means of production. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, but fuck off if you're going to try to tell me that that's not being an owner, right? And then, of course, there's this break between it's just like ownership, but like distributed, like how Foucault would talk about power, basically. And then there's control. And so it's like you could own nothing, but control everything. And if you have control over an operation, or if you have major influence or partial control at some level of the hierarchy in a system, and that already came with some degree of prestige and recognition, it's like, okay, you got these owners, you got these controllers. Okay, what does that mean? It means that a lot of times the owners will actually have proxy people sitting in for them in meetings, and that a lot of the decision making is kind of subbed out to professionals or managers. And so that's why I say professionals or managers of capital. I think everything I just said in the last couple minutes debunks almost everything that's been said on the internet today about the PMC when it comes, oh, it's on a class. Okay. Outside of that, though, they don't listen. It doesn't matter. I don't even care. It doesn't have to be class. I'm post-class. I don't give a shit. So, throw the idea of class out altogether. The PMC stands for the Professional Managers of Capital. We can retain, sublate the acronym. And my new position is that the PMC is not to blame for the problems of the world. But it has an undue or, a disproportionate share in the responsibility. It has a disproportionate share in the responsibility. You can say that the owners have more, but we can talk to our professionals and we can talk to our managers. We can't talk to the ruling class. Professionals and managers can talk to the ruling class. I don't know. They can also talk to each other. And in fact, their whole job is usually talking. So, I mean, I think it's our job as working class people, as workers at Amazon, as warehouse workers, as, long haul truck drivers. It's our job not to be political representatives and not to sit here and jack off and imagine that we're going to be like, part of the actual political vanguard of any kind of a movement. We're not. We're not important. And all we can do is develop ourselves intellectually so that not so that we can hold accountable so much as humble the PMC. And what I mean is like, make it historically conscious, make it class conscious, make it aware of its role in the reproduction of capital, make it aware that all of its virtue hoarding, social or cultural war type things actually are downstream from and kind of a distraction from the ultimate issue here. Right? It's like all of these problems they like to focus on, as Mikey said recently, are problems that people focus on when money's not a problem. It's like, if you say, my problem is that I'm black. Okay. This is very different from saying I'm broke and I'm black. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And honestly, which would you rather? A whole bunch of money or to change your skin color. And if you just say, oh, it's just the color, you see, oh, fuck it, I don't care, dude. I just don't care. I cannot relate. I cannot relate with a person who would say anything else before the money thing, unless it's time energy. Because it's, that would kind of presuppose a reorganization of society itself. Yep. And so that's it. Yep. It's the idea of radical responsibility I talk about in my essay on the PMC in Underground Theory. And the idea that it's not about a enlightened leadership or like an enlightened technocracy that we need. I mean, that would be great. I would love that, but I just don't believe in that. I believe in the only way that people in key positions become somewhat humbled is when they realize that going to college has set them up for a lot of opportunities, influence, leverage in their niche positions, whatever. But it actually, because they're not able to listen to books all day and do long form exegeticals the way I'm doing with Nance over here, they realize, oh shit, I'm not the biggest brain in the room. What should I do, guys? Or what should I not do? Because we can't really tell you what to do, but we can tell you what not to do, right? Yep. And so what I'm proposing is the relationship between the people who want to be a part of some kind of a political vanguard and what I want to be a part of, which is a part of an intellectual vanguard that says, no, I will not do politics, and you guys better do a better fucking job. And not just a better job, but like stop lying to us. Stop lying to yourselves and stop being ahistorical.
So, I'm hearing essentially class warfare in that the working class needs to essentially like create, I don't know if it's obstacle, but the conditions for the working class to have some level of self-consciousness about what their role is in things. And I'm certainly I agree with everything you've said there. I think that the PMC can possibly, or at least a portion of the PMC can possibly come to some kind of self-consciousness about its dependence upon the working class to create, essentially better conditions for not only all of society, but even the PMC. I mean, certainly Mark Fisher is definitely emphasizing like the level of kind of anxiety that's growing and mental illness that's growing in society. And I think PMC is a significant piece, or is experiencing a significant piece of that, for example, just to throw out an example.
And the PMC's approach is either like this kind of cruel conservative response or this mollycoddling, like insanely paternalistic and way too permissive, like extreme other side that it's like, oh, well, I couldn't tell you that to work on this or read a book because that might hurt your feelings,
Right.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I'd like to talk to you about is why socialism? Why are you still stuck on socialism? Socialism invokes its opposite, individualism. You could say that we have too much individualism. We need socialism. I just think, and I understand that you mean a political economic system, but I'm talking at the level of the game, of the semiotics game, outside of what it does invoking historical failures and atrocities, which are arguable. It's arguable how much of that's real. Outside of it, just at the level of semantics and rhetoric, individualism versus socialism seems to me like we don't have good enough individualism and we don't have good enough socialism. At a certain level, we just need both and we need them better. And the preconditions for that is time energy. Right?
Well, so I do, in my definition of socialism, presuppose individualism, like basically that the reason why you fight for socialism is because it's individually advantageous. That, as a worker, you form a union because that's going to be, your best option.
Right.
Now, of course, so socialism, of course, has a long history and is a very loaded word. But historically, it has been a utopian vision of the future. And when I say utopian, I don't mean that in a negative sense. But it gives us a horizon to work towards. And, certainly like Paul Mason and Nick Cernicek, they were, before Bernie, they were saying like, let's use terms like post-capitalism. But I do think that there's a lot of history in the socialist movement that we can build upon. We just need to be able to do it in a way that recognizes that we're not obligated to follow some old formula. We have to reapply, kind of reimagine what socialism means today. And I think that there's a lot of value in that vision and in that history.
I could definitely agree that
Timenergy fits in there, but perhaps that's another conversation.
Well, hopefully we'll get to have that interview with One Dime Radio very soon where we can kind of keep going with this. Yeah. Well, for now, that was my timer. So we just got to close out.
Okay.
Elton, it's always a pleasure. It's kind of weird to be doing this when we're in the same city. Let's get together in real life, get some pizza soon. And yeah, I really appreciate it. Thanks for coming by.
Yep. Happy birthday. Thanks
Peace.
a lot. Bye.
Thinking is super uncool, and that's why you should do it. It's just like almost anything that's like cool anymore. It just sucks. And I think that's like what the underground movement has always been about, is just like seeing what's in the mainstream, being like, it ain't there, and kind of like cobbling something together, and yeah, it's a little mismatched, but that's like its beauty.
We cannot do direct revolution, but the only way to lay the foundation for it is to do what you are doing to move the underground. It's a theoretically correct title.
Welcome to Theory Underground, where workers with earbuds can find genuine liberation from necessity.
Research at Theory Underground focuses on what is most important for understanding our current situation. Theory of the subject, capital, time-energy theory, critical media theory, CMT, and the most essential critiques necessary for understanding why the theory, ideology, and common sense of influencers left to right misses the mark.
We bring primary texts from leading lights of diverse fields to bear on topical issues and works popular in our current world. Theory Underground is a publishing house as well as lecture course and social media platform.
You've been reading Underground Theory.
Yes.
And
amazing book. I'm a publisher and an editor. I run and review books. Literally, it's my living. This is the best edited collection I've ever read.
Jesus Christ.
Seriously.
This is a little experiment in what I, David McKerracher, can pull off without relying on the academy or the algorithmic dictates of the attention economy.
Usually a good edited collection has good essays, but you only want to read a few. Every essay makes me want to read the other essays because you have a vision. Everyone that you invited for a reason. You weren't some fake publicist. He's like, how's so-and-so's a new book? Have them on your show. No, you only talk to people because you've read shit by them that you've thought about, that you think has value, even if you disagree. So I think that's what's amazing.
I believe that I am, like so many others, pioneering a future in which educators can form learning webs that will make learning as a way of life enjoyable and emancipatory. However, before these tools become accessible, they have to be experimented with. That's why I built my own website and app using nothing more than my own saved wages, 5 patrons, and some small classes of students over the last year. Of course, I also have had my wife Anne's moral support and help with accounting so that I don't get in trouble with the IRS or whatever. In less than a year, Theory Underground has already put out 8 courses, 2 books, one, my book, Timenergy, and the other, Underground Theory, which has over 30 contributors, including works written by students at Theory Underground, some of my fellow travelers, and colleagues in the broader universe of underground theory. Beyond the books and courses, though, you will also find interviews, reading exegetical reaction sessions, and live weekly events for working class autodidacts, independent researchers, and renegade academics. These include a variety of clubs and cohorts that meet on a weekly or monthly basis. If you want to get involved, there are 4 main subscription levels:
Think of it like a gym membership, but for your mind.
The point is to make learning, practice, and theoretical comprehension a way of life. Support at this stage of the operation is more crucial than ever because my savings were used up over the last year of getting this established. If I can triple my subscribers in the next 2 months, I can quit my gig at Amazon and focus on this work full time. All I need is a few more people at each of the levels or a couple big time patrons who just want to see it happen. Right now I am doing a patron and site subscriber drive, so excuse the commercial. But if you end up really liking what goes on at this channel, consider signing up soon. If you cannot afford it, but want to get involved with some of the stuff behind the paywall, I have made a financial aid scholarship you can sign up for here in the description. Quick side note, some people ask about the profit motive. At this point, I have not actually made a return on any of my investment in terms of the amount of time, energy that I put into things, the amount of savings I've actually put into things, the opportunity cost of the work that I'm doing as opposed to the other kinds of things that I could be doing for money. But more importantly, I don't actually make enough to pay for my cost of living. The goal is to make enough for my cost of living, and then once that is achieved, everything over that amount is going to go towards expanding the operation to the point where I can hire Michael Downs, aka Mikey of The Dangerous Maybe, to be a full-time researcher and part-time teacher at Theory Underground. All right, so with that aside, I just want to say also, if you are a worker with earbuds, what's up? I see you. I work at Amazon part-time and everything I do is for my past self who used to work there full-time. Most workers with earbuds couldn't care less about theory, but I do believe a working class intellectual revolution could grow out of the underground theory scene. My hope is that what I have built here will contribute to making the scene something more than just a scene, and you into something more than just a scene kid. We're trying to make this into a real intellectual milieu capable of leading a way forward beyond the imminent crises facing humanity. But for that, we need thinking now more than ever.
Start thinking.
I hope that you either will or have enjoyed the program, and also make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and leave this playing in the background all the time while you're doing other things.
Playing long-form Theory Underground content in the background while you do things has, in the near future, been scientifically proven to emancipate minds from the functional illiteracy imposed on workers by the structural stultification of time energy. This is achieved by reterritorializing circumspective concern.
Also, to some degree, it is for the algorithm.
Think of it like a gym membership, but for your mind!
I love you so much.
I love you too.